What up, what up, what up, elementals? Welcome back to another installment of FEU United. I'm excited today. We got a great show topic. I'm going to be your host tonight. I'm Fire.
And I'm Water.
I'm Win.
Earth.
So, on last week, at the end of our talk, one of the viewers really posed a challenge, right? The viewer said, we should do a show about men and their feelings. So you guys should do a show about men and their feelings. And since it was my time to shine, I figured that was a great idea. Now, at first mention, some of my elemental brothers, my element brothers, I believe it was Water exactly, was like, oh gosh, why are we gonna do this? And so I'm hopeful that this show
Yes,
makes
I did say that.
that was you.
Yeah,
I'm,
that
I'm,
was me.
I'm hopeful that this thing gets a little uncomfortable, but it gets uncomfortable in the spirit of growth. So I want to set it off. Men and their feelings. I want to make a promise to you because I want you to listen from this place. If you are a female viewer, or I'm sorry, woman viewer, all of our sister elementals, listen from a place of understanding, listen from a place of empathy, um, listen from a place of reconciliation between what you think or how you feel about men and their feelings and what is actually so. All of our brother elementals, listen from a place of learning, awareness, knowledge, and maybe a desire to shift in your own mind and your masculine frame around the judgment that you bring to the whole context of. Without any further ado, I'm gonna set it up. I'm gonna start with the definition because when guys talk about emotions, it's like, man, straight, right? Like emotions are for girls. But the truth of the matter, the dictionary definition goes this way: a natural instinctive state of mind deriving from one's circumstances, mood, or relationships with others. I'm gonna say it again. A natural instinctive state of mind deriving from one's circumstances, mood, or relationships with others. I'll take a pause. So, the first thing that I want to challenge is this notion that emotions are for girls. Because I said this on one of our prior shows. Show me a football fan, show me a basketball fan, show him a game where his team is getting the snot beat out of him, and show me a man who is even killed. You're not going to find one. Anger is an emotion. Guys, when you think about emotions, when you think about the definition that I just read, for you, what comes to mind? Would you say that you're somebody who perpetuated this ideology that emotions were for women, or were you already present to the fact that you have emotions and you owned it? I'll start with Water.
You start with me when I didn't even want to do this show. Wow. Thank you. I appreciate that, man.
You're welcome.
Just set me up for failure off top. Gosh, I got to say, man, that if I really was honest, okay, and listen, guys, however other many guys are out there, you're gonna feel me on this when I say that. Yeah, like when it comes to myself, emotions are for women. I don't have time for it. I don't have a place for it in my life, and I cannot say that that's healthy. Okay, like to me, that just even speaking it out loud just sounds super unhealthy, and at the same time, that's just the way that I was raised, and that's just my experience through life has brought me there. So for me, I can say, yeah, but when I go through my life, right, the I guess the conscious masculine part of myself wants to be like, oh man, no, I'm totally in tune with them, and I do feel like that I am an emotionally intelligent person. Where if I need to step back from something, I can step back from something. If I want to kind of pull myself away from some baggage that I may have on the situation, I can pull myself away from it. need to resolve some conflict, I know how to handle those things and kind of deal with my own stuff so that I can resolve that conflict. So I do, in a sense, have the ability to kind of put my emotions aside and kind of stay peaceful. However, pulling the armor back and showing that vulnerable part of myself, that's a whole different story.
We're gonna tap into that because you're hitting on something that's really important that we need to unpack as a brotherhood. When
I'm shocked that you actually said that, Water, that you put your feelings to the side, because
not when I deal with you, okay? Not when I'm dealing with you, I don't. Hey, the other elements know.
you let Win have it.
Yeah, I think out of all of us, I'm the most emotionally. I wouldn't even say suppressed or repressed or whatever you press down on it, but I'm very controlled, right? And I don't think that there's anything wrong with being controlled. I don't think that it's unhealthy, at all. I think it's actually healthy to actually manage your emotions. I think it's unhealthy to not manage your emotions and to act erratic and behave in a nutty way that impairs you and impairs others. So I mean, here's the deal: is that all men, all women, we all human beings. We all have emotions. We all have feelings. We all have, this human experience, and so none of us can evade any of that. But the question is, are you stifling your emotions in an unhealthy way, or are you controlling your emotions in a healthy way? I mean, that's what it is for me.
Well said. What you hearing so far, Earth?
No, I like really what everyone had to say so far, because I just love different opinions and different views on things. And for me, I see nothing at all wrong with emotions. I think emotions are great, but for me, it boils down to, are you being run by your emotions, or are you running your emotions?
Right.
To me, that's the distinction. Emotions are great. We have them, so use them. But are they running the show? And so, to me, that's the fundamental, difference between, someone who, I think someone used the word, who's in control of their emotions or control of their temperament, as opposed to someone who's being run by that. And anyone who's being run by that, those are the most out of control people you'll ever find in your life, and they're the easiest people in the world to control. I love having conversations with people who are not in control of their temperament, who let their emotions run the show. That is those are the easiest people in the world to really master. In a nutshell, that's the best way I can say that. But yeah, that's my view on that.
I knew
so
you
everybody who's listening, hold on. So everybody who's listening, now you know when you have that argument with your spouse or your girl or your man, like send him to Earth. He's gonna listen.
from nothing.
Listen. Yeah, he's gonna listen to the person that's that's at 100, while you like, oh, okay, yeah, go talk to that guy.
And we're listening to you without seeing your face, so it's actually, we could just do the whole show like this. It's actually better. I think it's a better aesthetic.
Oh man.
So, Earth, thank you for teeing me up. Unbeknownst to you, my first distinction tonight. I got 3 distinctions. Y'all know, y'all elementals know I love me some 3s. So the first distinction tonight is we have emotions. However, we are not our emotions. I got to tell you, I was actually, me and the brothers were in a program together called the Landmark Forum that was 2010. So it's 11 years ago. I was about 29 years old when I realized or got the distinction that I have emotions and that my emotions are actually not me. And so I want to read the definition of emotional intelligence, and I'm going to spin it back around the horn to the brothers to unpack this idea. So emotional intelligence is a concept that really gained its popularity in 1995 through the book called Emotional Intelligence, written by a science journalist named Daniel Goldman. And so this is what emotional intelligence is defined as. It is most often defined as the ability to perceive, use, understand, manage, and handle emotions. People with high emotional intelligence can recognize their own emotions and those of others, use emotional information to guide thinking and behavior, discern between different feelings and label them appropriately, and adjust emotions to adapt to environments. It's almost like a logical approach to emotional management. And when I got this distinction, to Earth's point a moment ago, for myself, anger was something that I could choose. Aggression is something that I can choose. Competitiveness is something that I can choose. Fear didn't have the same stronghold over me that it once had before because I didn't know that it was running the show. Overconfidence, anxiety, on and on and on. These are like just indicators. They don't have me at all. So I'm gonna go back to you, Art. Go back to a point where you had no idea that emotions were something that you could choose. And then when you became present to the reality that actually you're running the show, you have a say in the matter of how you feel.
When I realized that,
Yeah.
ask that question one more time. Make sure.
Yeah. There was some point. I'm assuming that there was some point in your history where you had no idea that your emotions were running the show, and then then you became present to the reality that these are just sort of the body's physiological response to circumstances, and you have a say in how they go, how you respond or react to them. Because for me, it was the forum that we were all in together.
Yeah, I would have to say that was the point for me also. I was never really like an overly emotional guy, but I realized that instead of what I would do is I would suppress my emotions. So I was still being run by my emotions. I just didn't express how my emotions were running me. Because when you suppress your emotions, to me it feels like a buildup, like an explosion is happening inside. Like that's how it felt for me. And I didn't have control over it. But looking at me from the outside, you would have no clue that I was angry. I was pissed. You just have no clue. So it wasn't until we took the form when I realized that that's just not a good look at all. Just for me, internally, it wasn't a good look for me. Right. And so, yeah, I just learned just to if somebody's saying something that somebody upsets me, whatever they do, they're just doing what they're doing, and it's not personal. They're just doing whatever they're doing. And if you take me out of the picture and put somebody else in, the person will react the same way to them. So it's not personal. So once I got that nothing is personal, I'm cool. I'm cool as the other side of the pillow.
That part. So what does creating some space between you taking something personal, bro, Chief, I don't know if you can see this, but there's like a to your left, there is it's a finger. It's a finger.
Dude, my light is falling.
Hey, we gotta cut this up and put it in the 4 Elements United blooper. There's gotta be a blooper reel, man. I'm not even gonna tell you what that thing looked like, bro. I'm not gonna tell you what it looked like. I was thoroughly confused. And Water's like, what is that in Pete's frame? I'm like, I can't.
So we have a little private chat just so we can bring it. So look, we already broke it in the fourth wall here. So look, we have a little private chat. We were chatting, texting back and forth, like, what is that? and so like when I came back, I could see his face. And I could not keep it together.
I'm emotional.
Yeah, like that was.
Oh boy.
I wasn't able to keep those emotions in check right there, bro. Like, I got pretty emotionally unintelligent right there.
You got toxic.
A ring light was falling. And I'm holding up with like
you hold it. That was your thumb. That's what it was.
Yeah, that was my thumb. It was this side. Let me see if I can get it back up there.
Don't do that again, bro. Don't do it again. Oh no. Let it go.
Time out. All right. Let me reel these jokers back in. All right. So Eric, you made a point that needs some unpacking before we move to win. And it is this idea of not taking things personal. What did not taking it personal do for you in terms of perception and space?
Oh, I mean, it just freed me up. Like I was like totally free. And now it got me. I'm at a point where people can do pretty much anything, and I'll just look at them like, you're just doing whatever you're doing, and I have nothing going on with it at all. Zero, nothing. I mean, somebody can curse me out, which has happened, and I just sit there and just look at them, and they're just losing it. And the funny thing is, they lose it even more when I'm just looking at them, like, okay,
that's a fact.
If you get done, we can move on with this conversation, or we can part ways. Either one. So I have nothing going on with it.
Yeah, we gonna circle back on that one because where I grew up at, when somebody is agitating you, somebody's being unruly, somebody's is operating in emotional unintelligence. Like the conditioning was that you meet that ignorance with force. Right. You meet that ignorance with force, and if you don't meet that ignorance with force, you are a B word as a man. These are some of the agreements that get programmed into our subconscious mind that have us acting out in a very toxic manner, in very toxic fashions in relationships with other men, as well as our relationships with women, that we have no say in the matter. So go back to the time when you was emotionally unintelligent and when you had your aha moment when you realized you actually had the power.
Well, to be honest with you, growing up on the streets, you couldn't afford to be, emotional. You couldn't afford to to do certain things. Let me just give an example, just a clear example. Just because somebody says something to you, right? What you were talking about earlier, just a few seconds ago, is kind of true, but it's kind of not true, because if you meet certain energy with that same energy, it might require you to get into some serious gunplay. And if you're not ready for that, and if it's not really some serious things, then it's really actually masculine and smart to walk away, if that's possible. You get that?
Yeah.
So like I'm in Chicago right now, right? And one of the big things going on here in Chicago, is like carjacking and they shooting on the expressway. So one of the things that on the expressway, that road rage thing, right? So if you cut me off and I meet you with that same energy, and I'm rolling behind you like I'm going to do something to you, it could go into some serious issues, and it could be life or death. So you really can't. You got to be smart and control your emotions as opposed to being an emotional person. Otherwise, that might be your last day.
Well said. I think it's important to take a pause and just acknowledge that what I was referring to is the cultural agreement as to what masculinity looks like in the face of an agitator. Not saying that is conscious masculinity, but it's the cultural agreement. Like, this is what men do. If somebody step on your Jordans, somebody talk about your moms, somebody disrespects you, you respond with violence. And to your point, I want y'all to really get this, man. We get this verse when Wayne gets in, you got to kind of just like feel what he's saying, because it's heavy and it's deep. What's actually true, going back to what Earth said, is that masculinity, conscious masculinity, which is what this whole show, with this group, with this conversation is about.
What the elements are about.
What the elements are about is about controlling your emotions, being in control of yourself at all times, keeping your masculine frame at all times. And so I'm gonna spin it over to you, Water. Take us back to when you were rah. I know sometimes you still irk out on Win, but aside from that, take us back to a time where you were just like being your emotions as though that's who you were, and then when you got the realization that this ain't who I am, man, and I've been in control the whole entire time.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it goes back to the seminar that we all did together. I don't think you put it in the context. That's where we all met. Right. So the context for that is that this would have never come. This would have never been possible without that. I think that before then, I really wasn't even aware that I was being that. I think now, I think between then, I still fell off the wagon, had some lapses. And I think that even now, I still have my lapses and my moments of just totally being my emotions, completely just being my emotions and not necessarily being emotionally intelligent. However, the percentage of that happening is very, the 80-20 rule. Like, this is 10%, maybe like 5% of the year that I might even have some sort of moment like that. And 95%, I'm just like, oh, dude, that's like what Earth was saying. Oh, someone's just just let them do that. And I think that it really does, toxic masculinity really presents itself the way that Wynn was saying, of if that energy, if you are reactive to that kind of energy, it's always around. I mean, there's always someone, if you just go out of your house, okay? You're in you're in LA, Fire, Winds in the Shy, Earth and I are in Atlanta. So, I mean, you just step out of the house and, that energy will find you. But I think that one of the great things about what we're doing and what you were saying, Fire, is that we are being conscious masculinity, right? The show is about being conscious with your masculinity, not losing yourself to say that you should be something that's not masculine. Okay. Whatever your idea of that may be, we had a show about that a couple of weeks ago where we were just talking about what masculinity was, and we went through the definition of it, but it's about bringing consciousness to that. So it's about unraveling for me, okay, personally, when I get into that state of having a snap moment where it's like, okay, wow, I really was being my emotions right then. Really just slipped and just let it go. And to come back from that and say, okay, Well, so what happened? Right? Like, what was that? And I think that just using it as a tool, I like, because we don't want to present. Well, we are not presenting ourselves as perfect people. Like, the four of us have our flaws, and you will hear it come out. All of us share that stuff. So we're not presenting ourselves as perfect people. And I think that when you have those moments, to me, even if you experience a moment of just being toxic, right? You may just drop it and be toxic. And just to use that as a tool for yourself to say, okay, what was that? Like, where's that coming from? Where did that start? Like, what was I trying to do there? How did it unwind that way? And I think for me, that's what I use those moments as, not to try to pretend like, hey, I don't have those moments anymore. Yeah, I do. However, like I said, I think all of us were a lot more calm than we were like 20 years ago.
What's
All
my
of us
nickname
are calm
you had
down
for
from
me?
that.
You had a nickname
Yeah.
for me back in the day. You go ahead and tell them what it was. Oh, you can't. Oh, you can't. You can't tell them what it was because it's actually my last name. Got it.
Exactly. There you go. There you go. There you go.
Oh, it's funny.
It was, yeah, it was funny. Anyway,
Yeah.
So you hit on something that I want to reveal. The second distinction that I have written down, you guys are just teeing me up for my little distinctions. Is I wrote down indicators. So if we learn to take the judgment out of emotions, judgment out of from judging ourselves, from having them, judgment out of judging what they are, like categorizing them as good and bad, and we just allow them to be what they are. They're just simply indicators because we already distinguished that they're not who we are. They're just what we have as human beings. It's sort of inherent in being human. The second part, or the second distinction, is that they're just kind of like red flags or yellow flags, orange flags that do what? If we can learn to dissect where it's coming from, what trauma that is at the root of the trigger that causes me to feel this way, then we can self-assess and self-correct, especially if we're being our emotions. And so that's the second distinction I got. Gang, what do you guys think about emotions as indicators? Start with Win.
Emotions as indicators.
Indicators. Just an indicator.
Well, hold on, Wayne. Before you go, we had a comment from Megan, and I think when I was saying the awareness, she's agreeing with what you're saying, Fire, that, those indicators are exactly what it is. It brings that awareness. I think that's where Megan was going with that or whatnot. So I wanted to just chime in and say, to our audience, hey, look, if you're live right now, you're live streaming, join in this conversation. Like, we're here for you. So we're not here to just talk. If you have a comment or you hear something that resonates, question, you disagree, bring it, let us know, because we want that conversation. Go ahead, Wayne.
Well, let me just say this, is that there's a broad range of emotions. So on one side of the spectrum, there's good emotions, right? Or healthy emotions. And the other side is unhealthy and bad emotions. And it sounds like what we're kind of talking about here today, or at least what we're talking about right now, is unhealthy and bad emotions. And I don't know what to say directly to you, Fire, but let me say it like this. It's my experience that unhealthy, bad emotions stem from what's been passed down to us through environment, until we clean that up, right? One of the sources of bad emotions, in my opinion, is actually judgment. We have a negative judgment about something that's going on, what this person said, what this person did. It's how we filtering and perceiving, what's going on. And when I was a shorty, like I said, I grew up on the streets, but I learned, I read the Bible cover to cover. I read the Holy Quran cover to cover, and a whole bunch of other religious and philosophical texts. And what I got from those texts is that that judgment is the source of all ailment of man. And if you can control your capacity to judge, then you can live a very healthy and happy life. What else can I say about that? I'll pause right there and let you guys chime in. Go ahead.
Who want to feed off of that?
Earth. I can hear him. I can hear Earth. I can hear you contemplating over there.
No, you said something that was key, Fire, when you mentioned trauma, and it just had me like really think about, some of my behavior, especially as a young adult, and how it stemmed back. I can point right back to trauma, and it's not just it's not the trauma, it's the unresolved trauma. That's what it is at the end of the day, which a lot of times run the show, which a lot of times fuel our reactions and our emotions and how we navigate through life. Because when you have unresolved trauma, you're constantly in a state of survival, and you're in the same state of survival that you were in during the trauma.
Right.
And so you will tend to react the same way as you would react if that event was actually taking place, period. So when you were talking, I thought about when I was in when I was a shorty, I was in the 7th grade, and I was just in middle school. No, I was in 8th grade. I was in middle school, walking to the library, and something said, "Look up." I looked up, and these two like rednecks jumped out of the bushes. Well, let me give you some context. We were bused to a neighborhood where it was known for like Klan activity. We knew the Klan had a headquarters there, blah, 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 but we were still bust there. And these two dudes jumped out of the bushes with knives, and they were like running towards me. And I looked up, I was like, what the? And I turned around and ran. And all I remember is the heel of my foot. One of the guys dove at me, and the heel of my foot hit his hand. He was probably trying to grab my ankle or something. I don't know. And fast forward, I'm in college, and I'm fighting. I'm in a fight, and it's me and like a couple other guys, right? We were fighting, and all I could think about, or I think about it now, I was literally thinking about the only way I can get out of this, because I went back to that moment when I was 13. I have to kill these guys to get out of this. Like, I distinctly remember that running through my mind. And it was a result of that incident there. And it was never resolved because, back in the day, was the only therapy you got was, you see my mouth not moving, was
there was
none.
There was zero therapy. And so that actually drove my behavior. And I was surviving the entire time, surviving, because that incident was unresolved. That incident remained unresolved until we took the landmark form 10 years ago. So if there was ever a threat, whenever I was threatened, and one person was never a problem, whenever it was multiple people, killing them ran through my mind, literally, because because they were trying to kill me. So that's the only way I was going to get out of that situation, period. And so it's the trauma that's actually running the show. That's what's underneath everything. So when you mention trauma, it just really took me back to that moment.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Wow. Traumas and triggers is real, folks. Megan said, "Preach, Earth." We all have it. Back to awareness and realizing and recognizing when you're engaging in negative behavior. This show, if you follow us and you tap into our shows, you'll realize that this is much less about entertainment and more so about introspection. right? These conversations aren't conversations that are being had in everyday social circles, but they're really imperative conversations. And so we're bringing it to you. Don't just listen to us and our story. Look within yourself and see, look back at when you were 5, 6, 7 years old. And when you had that first traumatic experience where something or someone got created where you thought that your life was literally in danger, that you had to fight for your life. And then deduce from that point in time how you reacted or responded to a threat for the rest of your life into this point. Tie it all the way back into that moment where the redneck jumped out of the bushes with knives. That's Earth's story. My story was the bully who came, knocked me off of my power wheel at 4 years old, took it. And then the bully that came and took my bike 2 years later, right? And then the bully who ran up on me when I was skating around the circle in the projects, minding my business on my skates, and punched me all up in the head. Like, these things show up even to this day. I don't like authority. I don't like nobody telling me what to do. I hate bullies. Anybody who tries to be domineering, I want to rip your face off. Right? And it goes all the way back to these triggers and traumas, to Earth's point. Well said, Earth. Water, what you hearing, brother?
Man, I guess I'm hearing that, our life unfolds as a manifestation of our traumas. That's what I'm hearing. Just like you, Fire, I look, I didn't grow up in the hood. I went to college. I can't even pretend like I'm some, that I have that kind of a background. However, I did grow up in Black neighborhoods, and we had to kind of go through areas that were kind of sketchy. They could be considered hood to get to school. And so I rode my bike through to school, right? Because it was too far to walk or whatever. And, my dad, he always was good about getting me the nicest bike, the shiniest object. I mean, you're talking about a shiny, white bike with mags, with the little freestyle pegs back in the day or whatnot. And, this cat, man, I was maybe 4th, 5th grade. This dude, like 6'2", grown man, looking dude. He was still a kid. He probably was like 17 or something, but just looked like a grown man to me. Was like, hey, get off that bike. Straight up like Debo. Straight up. And I mean, the guy just, he basically, because he had been talking to me, so I thought he was cool. So I would go close to him or whatever. And when I got close to him one day, he just pushed me off. He's like, yo, pop, give me that bike. And then took off and rode off with it, man. And let me tell you, I was devastated. Okay. So you're talking about trauma. I was devastated. I walked the rest of school. As soon as I went to the principal's office, I was like, just like busted out crying or whatever. Couldn't even tell them for like 30 minutes what happened, because I was just so traumatized, so devastated. And just like what you were saying, Fire, can't have anybody who wants to take what's mine, anybody who wants to really just have that bully type personality. And what's crazy is that when that's what motivated me in sports, right? So I wasn't good at basketball. I never could play basketball. Tried to play football one year and, got hurt. But I wrestled, and I ended up placing 4th in the state wrestling because I had it in my mind that, hey, listen, anyone they think we're going to box. Nah, bro, I'm going to like break your neck. Like you're at least going to have a broken shoulder. Something's going to be broken. And that's kind of like the mentality that I had coming out of that. So hearing, you guys talk about your traumas, I think that we're all just a set of that stuff, and we end up living our lives through that, and then continuing to like basically our future actions are dictated through those traumas, out as opposed to cleaning that up, right? And saying, like understanding what happened and how you can work through that. You just say, hey, I'm gonna build myself up, and pump these weights, no one's ever gonna, or whatever, and I mean, I have buddies who, You know, they collect guns, whatever it is. They have a lot. I mean, you know, a straight whole arsenal, you know, tons of ammo. It's like anybody want it, you know, and you know, they're very harmless, but, you know, they've had incidents where something's happened. You know, I had a buddy who was robbed at gunpoint, and now he has this concealed carry. So I hate if anyone ever tries to rob him, because he's going to get him. I mean, you're talking about a guy who goes to the range, practices, you know, pulling it out, you know, like all of that stuff, plays paintball, you know, like he's ready, you know, like the tuck and roll type thing or whatever. And I think that we have these traumas, and then we start to, like, our world becomes filtered through those, and that's who you become, as a set of those traumas, until you unravel them.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing is that we're always going to be human beings, and so that's always going to exist. The thing about it is that how fast can you get conscious and deal with it in an effective manner? Because, like I said, it's always going to be there. We're always going to be humans.
Well, I think that the speed at which we get conscious is predicated upon, you know, how fast we become aware that it's occurring. And I think this conversation, when at least creates a knowing and an awareness for those who are listening, that there's some space between how you feel and what you feel and who you are, right? We just made some distinctions today. On that note, I want to talk about the role of vulnerability in this speed of consciousness and shifting, because I think it was Earth who talked about vulnerability earlier in the show. And I think for me, one of the reasons why I believe I live this naked life, right? If you watch our show, you'll hear me use the terminology naked, and I gave a definition of what that is because of how transparent my dad was. So my dad he's still with us, is a man's man, right? Very macho, handy, carpenter, gruff, gristly kind of dude, right? But one of the things that he always demonstrated for us when I was young was how he felt about something. It wasn't just anger. To Wynn's point earlier, like we talking about all the sort of negative, low vibrational emotions, but there are also love, joy, peace, happiness, you know, pride in your children, et cetera, and so forth. And so he exuded all of, he wore his heart on his sleeve, man. So that has created in me a way of being. I wear my heart on my sleeve, and not just do I wear it on my sleeve, I will articulate how I'm feeling. And that's very helpful. So I want to talk about the role of vulnerability in communication, like being honest with yourself and being honest with the people who you're in relationship with, whether it's broskies or women. The role of vulnerability for you guys in terms of expediting the consciousness of managing your emotions.
Megan's loving the V word. and you know that was me who you know, was talking about, you know, being vulnerable. I called it, you know, pulling the armor back. I mean, come on. Yeah. Who can't feel that right now? We got to pull that armor back. Are you serious, man? Like, when you pull the armor back, it's scary. I mean, you're talking about, like, heart rate starts going up to maximum speed. And I think that society does not reinforce vulnerability. I mean, you know, look at you know, what's happening with athletes like, you know, Naomi Osaka and Simone Biles. You know, there's a lot of back and forth about, you know, like, look, you just need to get out there. And, you know, some are like, hey, you need to get out there. Some are like, no, you know, like, we do need our mental health days. So I think that just saying, hey, I can't do it today, that takes a lot to just pull back your armor and say, you know what, I'm human. Because these are the days right now where on social media, everyone looks perfect. Everybody looks perfect on social media. And I think that it's really always been like that. You know, keeping up with the Joneses is not new. That's been around since since cavemen, very likely, you know, like, hey, our cave's bigger than yours or whatever, you know. I have an elk horn bigger than yours or whatever that I killed, you know, from the elk that I killed. So I think that, you know, it's always been like that, you know, like trying to look good in front of everyone. But I think that say again. Oh, I thought someone says that. Yeah, so I was saying that, you know, I think looking good actually is what makes people not want to be vulnerable. Right? So when you're trying to look good for everyone else, you don't want to say that you have flaws. You don't want to show your human side. You don't want to show, and men, we don't want to show our weak side. Anything weak, going back to, you know, like the borderline toxic masculinity thing, you know, anything weak, you don't want to look vulnerable because that looks weak. So I think that, you know, vulnerability is one of those things that it's a tough one because society is not reinforcing that. And I think that that's really what we as the elements want to do, is we want to create a community of some place where we can create a conversation that gives people the space to be vulnerable. Because we could easily be out here with 10 times, 100 times the followers, 100 times the views that we have by talking about something really negative, something really toxic. But the four of us got together. We said, you know what? Like, we don't care. Right now, we have 10 people streaming. Okay. And look, we love all 10 of you for streaming because you are the people that we want to impact. And if you're watching this after the stream, you are the people that we want to actually impact. And you're the people that we're doing this for, because we know that no one else is talking about this. Everyone's talking about something negative, something scandalous, something that's totally toxic. And, you know, we want to create that space so that people can be vulnerable.
Well said, Water. It was you. My bad. I gotta give you your props when you drop a gem, man. That vulnerability is really the linchpin, in my opinion, to us shifting the conversation and our way of being around emotions and being emotional. So thank you. Earth, what are you hearing? Because the vulnerability conversation leads me to my last point.
Wow. So, you know, being vulnerable is just operating out of your true self. It's just allowing yourself to be, allowing yourself to just exist in the moment from moment to moment. When you're not being vulnerable, you're actually existing in some future something. Like, if I'm vulnerable, then this will happen. If I do X, then Y will happen. You're thinking about tomorrow. You're thinking about the next minute from now, instead of really being able to embrace the moment in which you're currently existing. Because other than that, you're just kind of making up what the next moment is going to be, and you really don't know what the next moment is going to be. And so when you're not allowing yourself to be vulnerable, you're being very disingenuous to yourself. You know, you're not really allowing yourself to be the full expression of who you are. And there's nothing wrong with being vulnerable, and there's nothing right with being vulnerable. It's just being vulnerable. That's it. You know, and it's very easy to do. It's very simple to do. And you brought up a good point. A lot of times it's about looking good. How am I going to look? How does this make me look? But you're still thinking about tomorrow. You're still thinking about the next moment instead of being present in the current moment. Because sometimes if you allow yourself just to be in that moment, it requires you to be vulnerable. That could be very healing to someone else.
Right.
Because you being vulnerable gives them the space to be vulnerable about something. And then, like, you can heal an entire community, you can heal an entire group of people just by one act of being vulnerable. And too often we walk around, with this coat of armor on us. One of you all mentioned that earlier, like this armor on, like, I'm just this big Teflon tough whoever. It's not just men who do that, we do it a lot, but it's just a societal thing, overall. That's how we walk around, so if we give ourselves grace and mercy, give ourselves a space to be the full expression of who we came into this lifetime as, not who we made ourselves out to be, then it's easy to be vulnerable. So that's my 2, 3, 4, 5 cents about that.
Yeah, for me, when I hear vulnerability, I hear, authenticity. You can't have functional relationships, healthy relationships. You can't be healthy yourself if you're not true to yourself and true to what's actually, occurring in that moment or with that other person. So, I mean, otherwise you're just fronting, and nobody's gonna, negotiate or have a serious relationship with somebody that's fronting.
So I'm gonna tie a bow on vulnerability and move into sort of the last talking point of the day. So we heard vulnerability, we heard from the elements, we heard the word authenticity, we heard Earth talk about presence and really the absence of judgment. The thing that I want to introduce is the practice of vulnerability. And I want to introduce the practice of vulnerability on the heels of shifting our mind or reframing vulnerability as something that girls do or something that is associated with one being weak, and actually begin to frame vulnerability as a strength. That those who are vulnerable, I'm not talking about people who go loose lips, just telling anybody your business just for no reason. It's dumpers. I'm talking about, I'm going back to what Wynn said and with the authenticity. So the practice is this. I want the elementals to practice being vulnerable. It is a skill. It is something to be exercised and I guess mastered, I would say, over time. There is somebody that's really close to you, whether it's a parent, a sibling, or a best friend. Between now and our next show, I want you to be intentional. A spouse, a significant other, I want you to be intentional about telling them how you feel. And I want you to frame it this way. This is the third distinction. First distinction, recap, is we have emotions, but we're not our emotions. The second distinction is emotions as indicators. Let's not judge them. We don't need to bring judgment to them. They're neither good or bad. They tell us something. And what they tell us is that we probably have a trauma or a trauma that's unhealed that we need to investigate and get complete on. But the third part is I feel versus I am. So if you're taking notes, the distinction is I feel versus I am. We have a habit in language in our speaking and being to say things like, I'm mad as, I'm pissed off, I'm so sad, I'm so anxious, I'm so depressed. Just listen, inherently in the speaking, I am is whenever you say I am, it is a declaration. Whatever comes after I am is so no matter what. The reframe is I feel. I feel sad. There's some space between me and the feeling of being sad. When there's space, there's awareness, a consciousness. And when there's consciousness, I have distinction of choice. And I can determine whether or not this feeling works for me. This feeling leads to behaviors that serve and support my objective, my agenda. That's the conscious part of masculinity in our cases as males, or the conscious part of managing our emotions. That's what it means to be emotionally intelligent. So let's table I am, because that is, when you say I am, that needs to be an affirmation. That is something that you want to manifest. I am rich. I am healthy. I am love. I am safe. I am strong. These are declarations or affirmations that actually support and serve you. But I am angry. Ooh, you don't want anger. You don't want that thing to have you. Okay, guys, what are you hearing?
So, I have a very, it's not unique because I'm sure it's not just me, but for this conversation, I have a very unique relationship with my feelings.
Mm.
I am detached from them totally. That's my relationship with my feelings.
I am detached from my.
Because when I learned and I trained, it's training, so it took practice to totally detach myself from my feelings.
Practice.
That's when I began to gain true power because my feelings were not running the show. My feelings weren't telling me what to do. I was actually choosing when I wanted to be upset. Literally, the first time I sat and chose to be upset, I blew myself away. I was like, whoa, I just chose it. I literally said, okay, let me be upset because there was something that needed that type of force to get that situation handled. The moment I finished saying what I needed to say, I literally went back to the state I was in prior, which was just like pretty much even. And there was no residual, nothing going on with any of that. And so when you speak about feelings, the key is not to be run by your feelings. And for me, not to be run by my feelings, I trained myself to be totally detached from feelings. I can be, I can know that anger is there, but I don't have to be angry. I can choose to be angry or not. I can know that situation is there. I can even know that, okay, anger is kind of lurking right here. And then in the moment choose to be like, nah, I'm good, and have nothing going on with it. And it's the same thing with, feelings or emotions that we would consider as being favorable, like love and happiness and joy and all those things. I'm choosing in the moment to be those things or not. It's to me, life became so easy at that point because I'm not run by any of those things at all. So that's what I wanted to add to that.
Yeah, I agree.
Go ahead, Win.
I was going to say I agree with that. It's my vantage point that feelings are meaningless. Because really, what you want to do is say, at this moment, this is my perception, and ask yourself, is that perception accurate? And deal with that in a healthy way. Deal with yourself and how you judge in that situation or that feeling.
Nice.
Because most of the time we be lying. Most of the time we be lying, right? When like most of the time we be feeling away based off of some story and not what is actually occurring in the moment.
Yeah.
Yeah, not only that, but oftentimes, we're just so damn petty. It's ridiculous. And we exacerbate situations and moments and blow them out of proportion, and it's just nonsense.
Go ahead,
I
Warren.
agree. Yeah, I was just gonna say that the comments are blowing up. Fire, what you were when you were on your stump and you were giving your sermon. People were feeling that. I am, and they like what you said is really really good, and everyone's feeling it. And I think that what I want to add to this, because I know we're running out of time, we got about 2 more minutes or a minute and a half. I just want to add really quickly that in the 4 agreements, Don Miguel Ruiz talks about being impeccable with your word. That is the first agreement. And what Fire was just talking about when he was talking about, being careful with our language is just really just being impeccable with your word. So the I am, we have to, speak into existence. And I know Wind is he's a big proponent of law of attraction, but we just have to speak into existence what it is that we want for ourselves and use that I am as opposed to use it to speak things into existence and use it to, be impeccable with our word as opposed to, being very, very destructive with our word. I think in the 4 agreements, he calls it using black magic on ourselves and on other people. So we want to use white magic on each other and especially on ourselves. I'll leave it at that, Fire, because I know we're running out of time.
Yeah, speaking of that, I just want to. Can you pull up Kenyatta's comment because it dovetails into what you said. Dovetails into it. Acknowledging, respecting, and allowing myself to feel through my emotions in those moments and not try to take up residence, no matter if they're triggered by trauma or happy feelings, has been very therapeutic for me. So what she's saying is, I want you to get present to the language she uses. Acknowledging, that's the awareness part. Respecting is about respect, is about ownership and no judgment. And she said, it talks about allowing herself. Listen, I'm human. I feel what I feel. And guess what? It's okay. Because
You're not
it's not I
perfect.
am. I'm
We're
not
not
perfect.
perfect.
We're
Yeah.
not perfect. It's not that I am these things, it's I feel these things. And so now she has the space to do something about it. Choose a different path. That's masterful, Kent. I'll call you Ken. I'll call you Yada. You Elemental. Hopefully, it's not offensive. All right. I want to close out with this. We talked about having emotions versus being them. We talked about emotions as indicators. We gave a distinction, I feel versus I am. And my element brothers gave a whole litany of examples. I would like for you, and I gave you some homework. I said between now and our next show, I want you to practice vulnerability. Get with somebody where it's a safe space and practice. Use the language. You know what? I feel. See, and just talk about how you feel. See how it goes. I guarantee you, you're not gonna die. We'll see you back. We'll see you back here next week. So any closing comments, Win? Quick 60-second closing comments from Win, Water, and then we'll have Earth take us out.
The only thing I got to say is, when you're thinking about this stuff, ask yourself, is this an unhealthy way to be, or is this a healthy way to be? And if it's an unhealthy way to be, work your way through it and get healthy, be happy.
Yeah. And I would just add that, listen, the elements, we do this for the audience. So down there, our social media handles, you can catch us on YouTube. You're gonna have to look us up on YouTube. We need 100 subscribers so we can have a special YouTube link. So come and like us and subscribe on YouTube, and then check us out everywhere else. Earth, you want to take us out, buddy?
Yeah, this was a really, really good conversation, and I'm sitting here thinking like, wow, we could have gone so many other directions, and like we always say, at like the 45-minute, 50-minute mark, we just start getting our wheels cranking. At that,
you guys, 11th hour, man. You guys always do that.
Hey, technology. Oh, I'm going to give y'all some thumb action. You see that? See the thumb action?
Oh man.
But yeah, so it was a really, really good show. I enjoyed the show. It actually had me think about some things that I really hadn't thought about, and man, I don't know how long. It's been a very long time. And at the end of the day, it's you have to be willing to be responsible, you have to be willing to be accountable for your actions. You have to be accountable for how you view the world, your perception of how things occur to you. You have to be responsible for those things in order to be able to, I'll just use the word, manage your feelings, in order to be able to navigate through life powerfully. If you can't do that, then it's going to be very difficult. Also, when you start this journey, don't do it by yourself. That is a dangerous place to be. And most of us are up here attempting to apply whatever lessons we've learned, whether we've read a book, we've gone to a seminar, you listen to the elements or whatever. We go up here with it and attempt to apply it. But life is happening outside of here. And so that's where you need to be in order to really, begin the process of transforming yourself from who you are today to who you want to be tomorrow. That is key. Now, with that being said, next week, it is going to be a hot show. I'll be hosting, of course. That's why I say it's going to be hot. But anyway, we're going to talk about next week. We're gonna switch gears a little bit and go into the relationship realm, just a tiny bit. And we're gonna talk about, are you dating by chance? Are you rolling the dice when you date? When you meet someone, are you like rolling those dice? So yeah, that's the topic for next week. So I'm excited about that topic. And I'm gonna bring something. We're all gonna bring something to bring a perspective that you may have never thought about. So it's not gonna be like your run-of-the-mill relationship show, men of this, women of that. We can't get together because this is why we can't get it. No, it's not going to be any of that at all. It's going to be from a totally different perspective that I argue that you probably have not thought about at all. So between now and next week, I want you to think about, have you or are you dating by chance? You rolling the dice because you just don't know. But that's what it's gonna be. We'll see you next week at if we're gonna do 8, we're gonna do 10. Doesn't matter. Just be prepared between 8 p.m. and 10 p.m. You know how we roll. Technical difficulties always happen. But that's all I got. Peace.
Peace.
Next week,
Peace.
everybody.